Hi, I'm Greg. I'm the lead singer for Lipstick Generation.
And I'm Steve. I'm the bassist.
And today on the Lifted panel, we are talking about Star Wars. That's right. There's a podcast on the internet talking about Star Wars. You found it.
Whoa.
It's the first one. A bunch of nerds talking about Star Wars on the internet.
Ranking the episodes in our preferred order even. I don't think anybody's thought of doing that.
No one has thought of doing that. But yeah, we've got a actual diverse panel with different ages, genders, opinions on the series, so not everyone is a huge Star Wars nerd. Some of us don't even like the series. So let's introduce our excellent panel of guests. We've got Steve Edwards from Eye for None. Hey, welcome back to the panel. I see you.
Hey, what's up?
Steve Edwards from the Steves.
Steve Edwards
My name
from
is
the
Steve.
Steves.
You can call me Steve.
The other Steve, Steve 2. Steve 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, this is my podcast. You're the one who has to have a dumb nickname now.
Steve
Flying
Episode
V.
2, Attack of the Clones.
Oh, Lord, not that one.
And hey, it wouldn't be a movie ranking podcast without the man, the myth, the legend, my buddy Lee McCormack, my brother from another mother up north. How you doing, Lee?
Hey, how's it going? Hey, Houdini. Thanks for having me on. Talking about Star Wars. It's gonna be good times here. We got look at the wind here. It looks like Hoth in the Great White North today, so I'm ready to go.
Yes, Lee is the host of a great podcast called Tramps Like Us. It's a great Bruce Springsteen podcast. Hey, speaking of podcasts that are much better than ours, we've got Bakko from Cobras Fire returning to the program. I think the last time you were on was talking about Animalize. It's been way too long, buddy, but I'm looking forward to you and me just fighting all over again. It's going to be great.
My Skype history says we haven't talked to most of these people in about a year.
Well, there we go. We're bringing up. Well, I've been on Lee's show a couple times, so it feels like fresh and new for me. So I'm like, hey, but Bakko, I was on his show recently, but we haven't had him on the Lifted panel proper for quite some time. So welcome back, Bakko.
Beep, boop, beep. Yeah, thank you.
And hey, we've got a first-time panelist, brand new to the show. We've got Christine Monet, actress extraordinaire, joining us on the Lifted panel. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you so much. I'm super happy to be here and rip some movies apart that I don't like. So.
Oh dear.
So this is the part of the show where we go around the panel, talk about our history with the subject matter at hand. Man, this is tricky. You know what I think we should do? I'm going to go sort of back and forth between people who were around when the originals came out and then us young millennials. So I'm going to start with Bakko. What is your history with Star Wars? Your general opinion on it? And just give us your history with Star Wars.
My fandom is largely just tied to the actual movies. I haven't really done a whole lot of the side stuff. Some of the spin-off television shows have been okay, but for the most part, I'm pretty into the movies. I own everything as far as like on DVD, Blu-ray, that kind of crap. But I saw Star Wars when I was 6 years old when it came out. And a somewhat short, funny story about it is that my dad took me. My mom was having a Tupperware party. So my dad took me and my sister to see Star Wars. And I'm telling you, my parents got divorced in '82. So there's a lot of space there, right? My mom will still bring up, yeah, he always had money to do stuff like that. It's like, Jesus, let it go. It was like $2 back
So
then. You know
her pyramid scheme wasn't working, is what you're saying.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, that's, next time she brings it up, I'm going to go back with that. Thank you. You said,
hooray, multi-level marketing.
At least I can change the dynamic of the argument she's been throwing my way for 30 years. But anyway, yeah, I've seen everyone in the theater. Now, granted, I needed help in the early days as far as like getting a ride and someone to pay for it. But now I'm a grown man with my own job, so I drive to the movie theater by myself, which is how I saw the most recent movie. Anyway,
you'll still sometimes grab a trench coat and a friend and pretend to be much older and taller than you really are, just to just for the nostalgia of it.
Yeah, exactly. Just to bring back the memories.
So would you say you're a big Star Wars fan? Like, do you love the series? Are you lukewarm on the series? Like, where do you stand on it?
I love it. Yeah, even the stuff that I hate, and I love poking fun at it, and it's got its flaws. To me, that's part. It's almost like probably why I like Kiss as much as I do. It's because almost the things you can kind of make fun of almost is part of the enjoyment too. But I really get hyped up for every release. Like I said, I ended up having to go at. I had a very small window to see it the weekend the last one came out. Typically, my son and I have gone, but we weren't able to arrange it this time. So I went at 8 a.m. by myself to a local theater to catch it, just so I didn't get any spoilers on social media.
Oh yeah, we're gonna spoil a series of movies from
there's
last,
gonna be spoilers.
40 years ago.
That brings up a good question. I didn't think about that. So this is not spoiler free then, correct?
No,
Almost certainly
it's a
not.
ranking, and
Okay.
also why would you listen to a ranking episode if you were concerned about spoilers? That's
I don't know. People do things they
the
do.
new Star Wars is
If
the
you're worried
best
about Star Wars spoilers for the new movie,
reasons.
you've waited too long to see it.
yeah.
At this point, it's what, a month?
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. Well, I think Marvel gives weirdly on one of their movies they gave a 2-week grace period.
Yeah,
I think it was for Endgame.
It was Endgame, yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't know that movies these Hollywood studios just created a grace period.
It doesn't, nobody listens to it though, so it doesn't
they
matter.
can say whatever
It's
they
arbitrary.
want.
It was weird how
speech.
they're trying to control the internet.
Well,
Right.
it's also for their own marketing as far as Marvel goes, just because they wouldn't put out any marketing materials with the Fat Thor or Smart Hulk or anything like that. Hulk.
Oh.
So it's their own thing that they lift.
Yeah, a famous YouTuber who I'm Facebook friends with, whose name I won't mention, got really upset with me when I posted about Infinity War. I'm like, spoilers for Infinity War. Thanos does that one thing Thanos is famous for. And he got really upset with me. How dare you spoil that movie? Just here's the thing. If you read the source material, you kind of should have just guessed that would happen. That's not really a spoiler. And if you don't know, don't Google it.
I think it's only offensive to people they've never read the comics.
And in which
right?
case, don't look up the character.
Well, yeah, I think a film like that,
Which is everybody who goes to those movies.
Yeah, a film like that, you shouldn't be upset about a spoiler. Like I was looking at an Instagram post about Uncut Gems, and somebody posted the ending of that just in a comment, and that was a dickish thing because that
at the end of
spoiled that.
Denzel, her ice powers awaken and she saves the day.
I mean, if it's a Disney film, you know I was going to
Wait, hold on. Are you trying to be spoilers for Frozen 2 are fine, Greg? Mister, that's the only film in the history of ever that you've avoided spoilers for?
So look, I avoided spoilers for Frozen 2, and I probably would have enjoyed it more the first time around if I had read spoilers. I
tried to help you out with this.
It
I
was an
gave you a whole list of spoilers.
It was an experiment to see if I would like the movie more, and instead it just made me have to process it more. But
is this a Star Wars ranking?
Speak of Star Wars, let's get back to Star Wars.
Steve
Edwards,
Disney.
you were so ready to talk about your opinions on Star Wars.
Oh,
Why
I
don't you
just
go
want to
next?
know. I enjoyed Star Wars. I'm not a huge fan. It was just a casual thing. Obviously I probably already showed my cards that I'm a big fan of Marvel and superheroes, that kind of thing.
How old are you for the folks at home?
I am about as old as the other Steve. We are 10 days apart. I'm 34 and a half at this point, I think. So really my main interest was I was when I was born in 85, so the 90s were my main youth years, and when Kenner did their second line of Star Wars action figures in the mid 90s where they brought it back, and I was 10 to 12 when that happened. So I got all those figures and got really into it, and that made me go back and watch the original films, and so I really enjoyed the original trilogy. And I guess I don't want to blow too much of what I think about it, but my opinions are much different now when I watch the films than they were when I was younger. So I enjoyed them, and then 99 rolled around, and I was almost 14 at the time, and I watched Phantom Menace. I was like, man, I don't think that good. And so that's where we stand.
So would you say you're a Star Wars fan?
And I wouldn't say fan, because I feel like right now when you say you're a fan of something, especially like Star Wars, people expect this certain level. So no, I don't hit that level.
Yeah, you don't love Star Wars the way I love Frozen.
No, I don't think anybody does.
So
Yeah.
let's shift gears. So Christine, what is your history with Star Wars? Are you a fan? And just general thoughts on the series.
Man, see, this is a touchy subject matter for me, and I'm the only girl on here, so if I get emotional, I'm just throwing that out there. It might happen.
It's okay. We'll start talking about Frozen, then I'll cry, and then we'll both be emotional. We'll make up for each other. It'll be fun.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I think when I was younger, just a little preface on me. I'm kind of a nerd. I like to say I'm a cool nerd. I go to Comic-Con every year, and it's been 22 years in a row that I've gone. So kind of like, like I like nerdy stuff. I like video games and I like Star Wars. But it's kind of bittersweet for me to say that right now because I really don't like all the new takes that they've done with it, and I feel like it's become it's like breathing air now, and you get like a new Star Wars something, and I feel like it's very like diluted now.
So what you're saying is that as a female fan, Haldo is the greatest character, and you wish there was just way more of her and less of everything else. Sorry, I'm just like trying to.
I was just assuming she was saying
terrible people on you. I apologize.
I just thought she was saying she doesn't like to breathe air. I'm confused.
Yeah. No, I think growing up, I love the original trilogy. To me, that is the real Star Wars. I want to dare and say it's the only Star Wars, but I don't hate some of the other stuff. So I don't want to like be a total elitist and say that. But the original trilogy is, when I refer to Star Wars, that's what I'm referring to. And I don't know. I fell in love with that universe. Like I'm also in my early 30s, so I grew up in the 90s, so I kind of had to watch it with my dad. But I mean, like, I don't know, like we bought like the actual lightsabers at Comic-Con, which at the time were like, they were expensive. I think they're like cheaper now, but they were like $200 something like at Comic-Con. So I mean, we have like the legit sabers, and I'm wearing right now, I thought we were gonna see each other's faces, but I'm wearing a Star Wars and BYU t-shirt because I go to BYU, and I'm wearing Star Wars pajama pants, and it has the original trilogy people on it. So I do love Star Wars, but I'm a little hesitant to say love anymore because I don't know what they're doing with my baby, my Yoda baby. I don't know what they're doing. I love Yoda baby Yoda. So I'll say that.
Yeah,
I'm a girl too.
Baby Yoda is so hot right now. Speaking of things that are always hot, Lee McCormack, my beautiful buddy from up north. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, good, man. Yeah, and I agree with you, Christine. The same kind of thing. So, Star Wars is very important to me. It was a big part of my childhood. I was in right at the beginning, or close to it anyway. I have very vague memories of seeing Star Wars in '77. I guess I just turned 3 years old, and I've asked my parents like if they have memories of taking me to see that, and they think maybe we went to a drive-in to see it. So although the memory of seeing the movie for the first time is vague, like my passion for the toys is not, right? So like the toy line that came out in '78, I think it was like a year after the movie, the toys were kind of late, and they came out, and the Star Wars toys were like the hottest thing for any boy in the '70s. And I remember getting like Han Solo's gun, and like that thing didn't leave my hip for like about 2 years, and like all the toys would follow, like getting my first figure like Luke for Christmas '78, and like an X-Wing fighter and robot R2-D2. Some of my fondest and earliest childhood memories are playing with Star Wars toys and creating my own battles and wars in the garden, in the backyard, and the stairs, and all over the house and stuff like that, right? So late '70s, I loved Kiss and I loved Star Wars, right? Like, and funny enough, like my extreme fandom for both of those things like died in the 21st century, right? So we'll do more on that later. But after that movie, like I wanted all the stuff, like magazines, posters, trading cards, T-shirts, all the toys. All my Christmas lists were always Star Wars toys. I dressed up like Chewbacca for Halloween
nice.
One time. I won a prize for that, even though I ended up in the hospital because I think I got a rash from the fake fur material that cost my mom maybe. But it was still worth it,
Award-winning Chewbacca with a mange costume.
That's right, yeah. And I just fell in love with all the characters, like all of them. Like Han and Chewie were my favorites. Like I always connect with Chewbacca. Like I loved how he was like a faithful best friend, co-pilot, very reliable, very loyal. Like I'm a Taurus, and I guess Chewbacca would be a Taurus too.
Yeah.
Han would be a Leo, obviously, right? But I loved all the characters: Luke, Leia, the droids, all the creatures. Like even Darth Vader. Like even though he was the bad guy, he was just so fucking cool in black leather, right? But as I became a teenager in the '80s, I stopped playing with toys, but my fandom continued. I got the trilogy on VHS, and I'd watch them all the time. And I have great nights in the '90s, inviting buddies over, and we'd stay up all night and pizza, and watching all 3 movies in a row, having good times. So, when Lucas was going to remaster the original trilogy, right, cleaning them up for a re-release, so he brought them all out in the theater. and I was excited for that. So I got to see them all in the theater one more time. And then he brought out versions of the original trilogy with special features. And back then I was excited to see like, new stuff in Star Wars movies, right? So at the time it was great. But, as time has gone on, that doesn't sit with me at all. Like the way he's changed certain parts of those movies. Some of the stuff is just ridiculous. Like the stuff that he added is just unnecessary. So I'm definitely a fan of like only those original trilogy movies. Those are the ones I have. So it'd be noted that as we talk about these, like I don't even watch those special editions. Like I have the original VHS, Laserdisc versions on DVDs, and those are the only ones I look at. Because hand shot first, right? Hand shot first.
I mean, there was the one version of the VHSs that was the original version, right?
Yeah, that's what a lot of people have.
Yeah, I have those, and they brought them out on Laserdiscs, which were the big, like 12-inch DVDs that were around in the 90s. So there's versions of those on the original trilogy, unedited. And I've since dubbed those DVDs, so I have pretty good copies of them, but they're not Blu-ray. But I just can't get on board with what he's done with raping and changing those movies.
I got a question for you. Since you were a fan of the action figures, have you watched the documentary about the original line of figures?
Yeah, so great, man. Yeah. So many moments seeing all those old commercials, and I think every year when you get the catalog, the toy catalog would come in the mail, like in the fall, and you'd see all the new lineup of toys. You just get so excited, right?
Yeah, that documentary is really good. It's actually better than most of the Star Wars films.
Zing!
I mean, look, the Colt 45 commercials are better than all of the Star Wars movies combined. But hey, let's go the exact. So Lee, would you say you're a Star Wars fan?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'll never same with Kiss. Like I parallel Star Wars with Kiss, right? Like no matter what they do to the franchise, like these days, I'm not going to let them ruin like the love and joy that the original stuff gave me, right? So I love those characters and I love that original trilogy. So yeah, I'm a Star Wars fan for sure.
So, Lee, I view you as sort of like a vision of masculinity. You work on cars, you listen to Springsteen, you're like Rocky and Rambo. Steve is the opposite. He is soft, he is weak, he is a nerd, he reads fantasy novels.
I know how to change a tire.
Oh, damn.
I've even changed my oil once.
All right, so never mind. Steve.
Masculine Steve. We're gonna call him Masculine Steve from now on.
Manly Man Steve.
But Manly Man Steve.
I've listened to several Bruce Springsteen songs. Sometimes on purpose.
But Steve, when I met you, my first thought of you was super nerd. You wrote a song about Red Dwarf even. You're a pretty nerdy dude.
Yeah.
So I view you as sort of like the bastion of nerd culture. Like you tell me about nerd things that I didn't know existed. So what is your history with Star Wars and your opinion on it as a super nerd who knows everything about nerddom?
Wait, I've got a nerd drop I should be using all the time here.
Nerd! Thank
Huzzah. You. Anyway, so much like Stephen Edwards, I also grew up loving this series. Obviously, the original trilogy was out by the time I was on the scene and paying any amount of attention to film. But we had the VHSs when I was a kid, and I watched them almost as much as I watched Willow, so I loved them almost as much. And I'd heard that it was actually supposed to be a trilogy of trilogies, and I was pretty excited about, like, maybe they're going to do the rest of them sometime. That would be neat. And then they announced they were doing special editions re-released in the theaters, and I got really excited. I went to see all three of those, and I thought they were great. And then, like, episodes 1 and 2 came out, and I went and saw those in theaters, and thought they were, pretty great. And then I went to college and started hanging around with a bunch of film nerds who were also like arch nerds similar to myself. And they got me thinking about the idea of being critical of media and, thinking about things. And then I went and saw episode 3 in theaters and was just a little less excited about things in general, and then, shenanigans with Disney acquiring things and, being also critical of copyright. I'm like, well, hold on. These should be in the public domain eventually. And then different people were directing the new trilogy. I was like, well, these are kind of neat. They're fun movies, but I don't know. And then, just as I get older, I'm less and less excited about these things that I view with rose-colored nostalgia glasses. but I'm probably still a Star Wars fan, largely. I enjoy Star Wars movies whenever I see them. They are fun.
They are fun.
Turn into a robot, yeah.
Yeah, you turn
Right?
into a droid.
They are fun. I like Star Wars.
Just
I am
plug
enjoying
into 'em,
this.
yeah.
These are entertaining
Who's
films
talking?
that
I am not-
improve my life, and the Disney Corporation should be provided all the funds to make further films.
That doesn't sound Stockholmy at all, buddy.
You're right.
So now it's me. So spoiler alert, I don't like Star Wars. Why are we doing this episode? Because Star Wars is hot right now. It's the internet, it's list shows, that's why people are here. My history with Star Wars is that I saw the Star Wars movies as a kid and thought they were awesome. And then I watched them as a young teenager. I'm like, oh, these are actually all terrible. Except for that guy from the Colt 45 commercials. He's pretty cool. I think they are... Star Wars is very similar to pro wrestling for me, where I don't think it's very good, but I know a lot about it and I think about it a lot, and I'm kind of annoyed at how much it's just permeated into my psyche. Star Wars movies, when I think about them, conceptually, they all seem very good. I like the visuals, I like the music, I think there's interesting characters, but when I sit down and watch the movies, I'm basically hating almost every second of it. So I don't enjoy watching them. They're like pulling teeth. They don't hold up for me, except for one Star Wars movie in this new trilogy that I thought was really good, asked some interesting questions.
Dang it, Greg, spoilers.
A spoiler. I'm playing my card now. The only one I like is Last Jedi. The rest I can do without.
Yeah, and that...
You knew that everybody's going to hate him, yeah.
I think that was the bottom of the barrel for me, right?
That's
Like,
most
on my-
most
my list.
big fans. That's how they feel.
Right.
Oh, that
Well,
was a horrible movie.
I don't think it's a coincidence that the one guy who doesn't like Star Wars likes the one Star Wars movie that all the fans hate.
I think it's also
I had
important.
that real high on my list.
Well, hey, well, let's avoid talking about that.
But it's
until we
also
get to it on
important to
the
note
ranking.
that you were the only person here in your 20s. It may be for a short period of time, but
Right.
you were still technically in your 20s.
I am in my 20s, so I'm the baby of the panel, baby Greg, baby Yoda.
It's interesting to get that perspective, you know?
But it's
Now,
just
Greg, did you see these in the proper order? Like, did you see the original trilogy before Phantom Menace?
it was original trilogy first, then I saw everything from Phantom Menace on. I've seen in the theater, so. I didn't see Rogue One. I didn't see Clone Wars. I didn't see the Christmas special. And
Yeah, I've never seen that.
I had a couple of people asking, "Hey, are you going to rate the spinoffs?" I'm like, "No, I've seen enough Star Wars. They got 9 chances." And we're doing this like, Final Fantasy rules, numbered installments only. None of those spin-off, yeah, we know Tactics is great, but we're not here to talk about that. Because otherwise, we'd be here for a long time.
Sure.
But speaking of things that would make us be here for an unnecessarily long time, as kind of a joke, I had 3 of us rank the Rocky movies against the Star Wars movies to see where they'd land.
Or rather, you asked all of us to rank the Rocky movies, and 3 of us responded.
Right, well, the 3 of us who had seen it. And
Yeah,
so when we did the
seen that.
ranking with just the 3 of us who had seen all the Rockies and all the Star Wars, all the Star Wars movies ended up in the exact same place as the final ranking when we added in all the panelists. So we're going to say that those Rocky movies through like Electoral College end up in the same spots they did in that other ranking, since the rankings are identical aside from Rocky movies.
Listeners, don't try to reverse engineer Greg's math. It's completely incoherent. I say this as somebody
I'm
who's
already
studying
lost.
a lot of
He's
math.
talking about.
I don't know either.
Me neither.
But Steve actually looked at the ranking and was annoyed with how it fit perfectly.
It kind of makes sense how he's stuck things.
So you're ranking the Star Wars movies based off if Rocky was in them?
No,
Is that what-
we're
I know.
adding the Rocky films and seeing where they rank
Based
in
on the
comparison.
number of rocks
I don't
in the
remember
film.
Rocky in any of the Star Wars
Well,
movies.
you weren't paying attention. Clearly, not a real fan.
It's called Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Stallone is in that.
Yeah, was he Darth Maul?
Yes.
Yeah, crazy backflips.
Stallone's always doing backflips.
The
You can't
Sarlacc was
stop.
actually named Rocky.
played young.
No, Rocky would definitely be a Jedi, man. Are you kidding me?
Oh yeah, but it's interesting the parallels between the two series because they both came out like a year apart from each other in the 70s. 8 films in the Rocky franchise, 9 in the main Star Wars franchise. Both of them had
fucking Rockies. Jesus,
I know.
Yeah.
I thought there was like 3.
Rocky
I was
is
thinking 5.
Rocky is in episode 7. Rocky Marshall played Colonel Eric S. Datu.
yeah. There you go.
Okay, great.
So,
but also parallels between The Force Awakens and Creed, as they're sort of like beat for beat remakes of the original of the series. So there's some parallels, and we're not going to talk about them too much, but I'm just going to be putting aside like, hey, here's where this Rocky film ended up. But coming in as the least best film in the Rocky Star Wars saga, according to this panel of experts and me, we've got Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, at the bottom of the list.
Yay.
Yeah.
I'm glad it hit the bottom, because I was afraid it was going to be Phantom Menace, and because people always put Phantom Menace at the bottom, I'm like, no, Attack of the Clones is worse. Attack of the Clones is definitely worse.
Are we doing the Star Wars ranking or this weird rock combination thing? I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. The Rocky films I'll insert when we have like 5 Star Wars films before we get to the first Rocky, because that's how much higher the Rocky films ranked.
Basically, he's going to talk about Rocky, and during those parts, we're just going to tune out and not paying attention.
Honestly, just ignore everything Greg says about Rocky, and it'll go much more smoothly for the rest of us.
Just humor him, because he's in control.
Don't even humor him. Just ignore it. Let it go by. It's like when somebody makes a bad pun,
you just ignore it. The best
response is to not respond.
Quickly move on.
Just make some chewy noises over it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, everybody who's a little bit sick, cough into your microphones when Greg is talking about Rocky, so he has to edit those parts out.
I actually wish I
will do.
I wish I had more time. I would have gone back and watched Attack of the Clones, because I only saw it one time when it first came to theaters, but I just remember absolutely despising it, thinking that as much as I didn't like Phantom Menace, I still liked the young portrayal of Anakin more than the Hayden Christensen portrayal. I think it was big.
Sand.
As a girl, I just thought Hayden Christensen was cute, but yeah, like the movie itself was really cringy. So when I had to make my ranking, I was just like, ugh. I put it second to last only because I thought he was cute and I had a little crush on him. But
Yoda did all those sick backflips.
Yoda's cute too. So.
Yoda did all those sick backflips during that lightsaber fight.
Yeah, that's true.
That was one of the things that I really disliked about it. I felt like it was
Yoda
so
fight.
cheesy. Yeah.
I thought
it was
awesome.
very cheesy.
I thought it was cool.
I thought the episode 1, 2, and 3, one thing that they all suffered from is that they overcast it. Like, they brought in too many credible actors that people know, and they were the worst performers in the thing because they all did exactly straight performances. I liked Hayden Christensen because he reminded you of the original movies where you never heard of these people, and most of them kind of sucked. I mean, so to me, that actually added to it. I hate young Anakin. That first movie, they probably should have made him more of a bit.
Are you
player.
an angel?
I am a child.
Yeah. But honestly, you can jumble up 1, 2, and 3 however you want. But I think they basically go 1, 2, and 3 is the 3 worst movies for me. But I really don't care. Make 3, 2, 1. I don't care.
I don't dislike. Yeah, I don't dislike Clones particularly, but I was disappointed in it. I found when I was watching it, I was like guessing how it was going to end. It was like, okay, this would be a cool way for things to go. And they didn't do anything interesting with the plot.
Yeah.
Like the entire time, I really, really wanted Dooku to be a good guy.
You didn't find a trade delegation an interesting subplot?
No, not particularly. Like, I really wanted to get to the end and there to be this big reveal that, Dooku is the only guy who knows what's going on and is actively trying to stop Palpatine's power grab, but he still gets thwarted and killed anyway. But no, they were just like, oh no, he was actually secretly like a Sith apprentice or whatever the most banal thing for him to be was. Drop a ceiling on him. All right. Next movie.
But there was that sweet scene in that space diner. It was like in Spaceballs. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, the thing I absolutely want from my Star Wars films is that for them to be cribbing from the parody of Star Wars,
which is better than Star Wars.
I mean,
I'm not crib from the best.
I'm not going to debate that point, but they still shouldn't do that.
Well, also it had Jango Fett. He's like Boba Fett, but blue. Wasn't that cool?
I mean, and he got more screen time. I think that was. I'm assuming that was the way of trying to redeem. But
that's a bad choice, though. Like Boba Fett's one of those things. Like everybody loves Boba Fett. The more of him you do, the worse he's going to get.
Yeah.
The important thing that I feel like was said though was making the joke about the trade negotiations, all the type of political stuff in those episodes, because really Star Wars boils down to, and fans would probably get really upset, a lot of them, about hearing this, but they're kids' movies. I mean, they really are. So it's just such an odd thing to create the next trilogy and add so much political subplot into it. It's very odd because kids aren't interested in that. It's boring. So I don't get it.
George Lucas was trying to get kids to be woke.
Maybe.
I mean, I do think that the original trilogy actually has the best thing to say out of all the trilogies, if I'm being completely honest. Like, hey guys, this is how fascism rises. Pay attention to this and don't let it happen. It's just like, the thing is, I don't think any of the Star Wars movies, except for, the best one, actually tells their ideas in a good way. So this is another movie of good ideas told poorly. But hey, that scene where all the Jedi were fighting at once, that was cool, right? Purple lightsaber, Mace Windu.
No, the action scenes in this one were actually kind of boring.
And do you feel like the having all the multicolored lightsabers kind of takes away from the original trilogy as well? Because what was kind of cool about that was it was just blue and red, and then Luke gets a green one there at the end.
No, I got opinions about lightsabers. I think the multicolored lightsabers and the better lightsaber fight choreography of the original trilogy were actually really good world building, in that in the post-Republic era, you have this timeline where just force powers and the art of lightsaber fighting are lost arts. Like, nobody remembers everything. So like Luke is trying to reinvent the wheel while he fights, an aging cripple well trained by an even older person. And then you go back to the original, the sequel trilogy, and there's a whole bunch of different kinds of lightsabers because they had better lightsaber technology, and there's a whole bunch of better lightsaber choreography because it was an art that people knew.
But it's only been 19 years. Like, that's.
If they're all dead, and it's like, if every Aikido master in the world gets slaughtered, and there's only like 2 left, their students aren't going to know all those sick techniques necessarily.
Right. We'll see what ninjutsu looks like in 20 years.
Yeah. So I actually I agree with Steve on that, and I think it's actually conceptually very good.
Which Steve? The two Steves disagreed on that point.
The nerdier one.
Okay.
Which nerdier Steve?
Which name?
One of them collects action figures.
Hey,
the one who thinks fantasy novels have good writing.
It's probably both of us.
Yeah.
God, freaking nerds.
The thing that sucks too about these original movies is the directing, the acting, and the writing, right? which is essentially what you need to have a good movie.
So you're saying everything?
Yeah, right. So characters are cool.
It's like poison.
Yeah, so we all want to.
You mean a great band?
But it's just not delivering. Like, you got Ewan McGregor there, you got Christopher Lee, great actors, but they have like shit to work with.
Yeah, right? They have a terrible director and bad writing. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
way out of control.
That was my overall point. You got these actors are too good. You need to bring in Mark Hamill type level guys.
Mark Hamill was a good actor, though. Harrison Ford.
He was
not.
Mark Hamill was not good in the original trilogy, but he's gotten very good.
No, Mark Hamill turned it. Mark Hamill turned into a tremendous awesome actor.
He's like present day Mark Hamill is an amazing actor, both live action and animation. In the original trilogy, he is really bad, and it hurts me because I love Mark Hamill so much.
It's almost like it was really early in his career and he hadn't figured it out yet.
Yes.
Farm boy, so he's playing it perfect. He's an 18-year-old farm boy, right? That's how they act. Like, they're all.
Yeah.
So I will make one suggestion. If we can try to avoid comparisons to films later on the list as we get to them, just because this might be a long episode.
Well, those bits will be shorter because we'll have already said it.
No, it'll probably just end up coming up again. But specifically about this movie, do we have any other comments about Attack of the Clones?
Well, yeah, I will just say then that, as many people have said a million times, I think the main issue here is that George Lucas couldn't relinquish any kind of control, because George Lucas is an awesome visionary. He has terrific ideas, but he doesn't. I think he started to realize in that original trilogy, he's an extremely creative person that may not be the best with writing dialogue or directing films. But if he can just give you the ideas and let somebody really creative, a really good writer work with it, it could be great. So every one of these films, if he was providing the main story outline, could be terrific if he had a good director and a good writer.
So he's a good executive producer and bad at everything else.
So basically,
Which means
he's like Walt
completely
Disney.
pointless.
He's like Walt Disney if only Walt Disney's corporation had bought his films, because that seems like the perfect person to continue his legacy.
No, but he's not pointless though, because he's extremely important, because he's the one the reason why this whole rich world has been built. He has amazingly creative ideas. He just doesn't know how to write dialogue or
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree with that.
I think the biggest problem in this movie is that Natalie Portman calls her future fuck buddy Annie the whole time.
you know.
That was weird.
Would you rather she called him Anakin?
You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say one thing.
She should have called him Annie Coon, and then she could have gotten more weed points.
Oh Lord.
I want to say one thing that just reminded me of. Even when I was like, what year did this come out? Like 2002 or something?
This was 2002.
Even when I was 12, when they're in the pit and Natalie Portman's like shirt gets ripped and then all of a sudden she has perfect bare midriff, even as a 12-year-old kid, I'm like, that's lame.
No,
Like,
that's
seriously?
pretty cool.
No, that was so lame. Like, it was so obvious what they were doing, and I'm just like, seriously? I just thought that was really lame, and just like, it didn't like happen naturally in the course of things. It's just
It was
obvious what they were doing.
Oh, so now we're talking about happening naturally, so we're just not going to talk about the movies then.
No.
There we go. But any
There's
of
a few fun moments though. The Mace Windu versus Jango Fett moment is cool.
Right.
Bad motherfucker Sam Jackson with his pink purple lightsaber cuts his head off. Right? That was badass. Right? So there are some fun moments in it, right? But you know, some confusing plot moments, horrible acting. This one holds up the least, you know, on subsequent watches too. It's just hard to get through.
I do think of the big name actors, Ewan McGregor did the best.
Yeah, and I do want to kind of defend Hayden Christensen too, because I've seen him in some other stuff, and he's actually quite good. So I think this comes down more to the directing.
Yeah,
because when you have amazing actors like Ewan McGregor still being like kind of not that great, there's a reason for that. It's how they're being directed.
I mean, there are so many great actors who are judged for early roles, like Michael Keaton was judged as Mr. Mom and then blew everyone away with Beetlejuice and Batman. Sparkle Dude from Twilight is apparently a really good actor, but he was just in the Twilight movie, so no one takes him seriously. But I will say that Ewan McGregor, a lot of people list Obi-Wan as one of their favorite characters, and one of my buddies was on a Star Wars podcast talking about how he thinks that people love Obi-Wan as a character because of the prequels. And I agree. I think Ewan McGregor did a lot to add to that character.
Well, we're about to see a lot more of him in his own series.
There we go. But are we ready to move on from episode 2?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Sorry.
All right. So next up on the list, I'm really shocked with how low this ended up ranking, but here it is. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, is second from the bottom.
Yeah.
Oh, huh.
Yeah, that's right.
Insane.
But I remember the hype for this.
I'm surprised this wasn't the worst one.
The hype was so insane when this one was coming out, though. Like a new Star Wars movie after 20 years or whatever. Like, I was there opening night with like a dozen friends, like all in a row. Like, it was just insane. But like 2 hours later, the hype was kind of gone, right? Like leaving the theater was like the air coming out of a balloon, right? It's kind of disappointing. Like the plot was awful, more convoluted stuff with that Trade Federation garbage. Like the opening scroll. Like, you need, like, a layman's terms, like, translator on. Like, what are they talking about, right? Like, and Jake Lloyd is awful. Like, the Jar Jar Binks thing is awful. Like, I remember sitting there in the theater and, like, turning to my buddy and going, what the fuck is this? Like, this Jar Jar Binks thing. And there's like a fart joke. And it's, like, ridiculous, right? But, like Qui-Gon was pretty cool. Like he's all right, and Darth Maul, he's a badass, right?
Yeah, Darth Maul is super badass.
The double-ended lightsaber and the fight with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon at the end was really good, and we'll just get it out of the way right now. Like John Williams on these movies, right? Like the score on The Phantom Menace is great, better than the other ones in this prequel trilogy. Like that Duel of the Fates song, like that might be in my top 5 Star Wars score songs. You know, like I love that Duel of the Fates.
So, so I have a question there. So, to the people who, the couple of guys on here that are a little bit older than us that were fans of the original trilogy, then you're past like the kid age by that time. You've been waiting, and then you go in to see Phantom Menace. Did you, before you went to see it, were you thinking it was going to be like something that was going to be huge and awesome that was going to live up to the originals?
Yeah, of course, right? And you got to realize, too, this is after about 2 years of Lucas, like, strategically re-releasing those original trilogy films, right? And then the special editions, and then all building up to this Phantom Menace, right? So it was just...
And learning the entire plot from Weird Al.
Right.
That song does not hold up very well after this episode came out, and you already know all those plot points.
Like, it was cool at the time, like, because it had that Star Wars vibe, like all the ships and everything. You're like, oh, this is Star Wars again. But then, you know, it wears off. Like, after you rewatch the film and you try to kind of dissect the story and, like, get into the characters, it just doesn't hold up. So, like, the shine wore off pretty quickly on that one.
I don't know. I love the pod racing, though. Like, I thought that was, like, one of the coolest things, at least as a kid watching it. And I was really disappointed that Disneyland didn't create, like, a pod racing in their little, like, Tomorrowland or something. And especially now, I don't know, now that they own Star Wars, I always was like, oh my gosh, this could be the coolest thing if you, like, created these actual pods and then, like, you get to do this VR simulator or something. You're, like, you know, racing each other, like. I don't know, Disney could steal my idea because I think it's pretty cool. But I thought that was the greatest part about the Phantom Menace to me was like the pod racing.
I think that's because I've been to Galaxy's Edge, and that's all based off of the new trilogy. So.
Yeah.
So.
Because I don't appreciate the original stuff.
You know, with young Anakin, one of the things that stuck out to me, and not to get into another movie, but you know, when Luke trains as a Jedi, Yoda's like, he's too old. And he says the same fucking thing about Anakin, who's like 20 years younger.
Yeah.
Well, you basically have to be indoctrinated at youth to be a Jedi.
Well, then Luke was clearly too old.
Well,
yes. Never an option.
Yes, he was clearly too old.
Yeah, sorry, bro. You are way past training time. I mean, like, shouldn't Luke be training with like little younglings? You know, of course, they're all dead, but
yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, spoiler. That was the one thing I took out of this. Yeah, that's it.
So my general take on Phantom Menace is I believe correctly ranked this at the very bottom because of all of the films, Phantom Menace most commits the cardinal sin of movie making, which is don't be boring.
Yes.
I remember I was super excited. I saw this in the theater and thought it was, you know, I was like enjoyed it a lot. And then like on some high school field trip, we were doing an overnight bus ride and they put on the Phantom Menace. I was like, awesome, Star Wars. I love this movie. And the next thing I knew, it was like 3 hours later and the bus DVD player was playing 16 Candles or something. I was like, wait, what happened to did I just like fall asleep during that movie I thought I really liked? Oh no! This movie was boring.
That's what I mean about. I mean, how you if your core audience is in the younger demographic and you make a boring film, it doesn't make much sense.
Yep.
But for me, the reason why I put Attack of the Clones last instead of Phantom Menace is because Phantom Menace has somewhat of a redemption, and just in the fact of
the
Darth Maul
fight
and the fight
is awesome.
The ending fight scene is the best lightsaber fight scene of any of the films, any of them.
Yeah, you're probably right about that.
So
I disagree there, but it's close. It's up there, man. It's pretty good.
I think it's
and the final moment where you realize that he's cut him in half, and you see his body separate down that track.
Yeah, okay, but okay, I have a question for you guys though. Do you actually like that they killed off Darth Maul in the first movie? I don't know. I was so disappointed. Yeah. I thought it was going to be the villain throughout the whole trilogy.
Like, Obi-Wan totally took over and took that guy down, man. That's awesome. Well,
yeah, but why not? Why can't that happen in the last movie, right? Like, why did they kill him off in the very first movie? He was such a cool character.
So
why not?
My thing with that is, so I'm a big Dragon Ball fan, and
Lord.
Yeah, it actually ties directly into that. And Dragon Ball has a long history of setting up really cool characters and then killing them off immediately because someone else is even cooler than that dude. And
I don't think anyone was cool.
Django Fett.
Am I the only one here who can give two shits about the lightsaber fights?
Yeah. You are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Laser swords, man, they're cool.
Laser sword fights are awesome.
No, they're cool. They're all. I've never even thought to rank them. I mean, fuck, go fight the laser sword fights.
That'll be a separate episode, us ranking the lightsaber battles. But anyway, back to this.
Yeah, well, if you're going to use the same premise, bring me on because I don't care.
Yeah, that'll be perfect. You can be the me of that episode, and I can also be the me of that episode.
Yeah. Cut off Luke's hand, that's enough for me. That was my favorite lightsaber moment.
So I've got some notes on this. So as far as you can fall asleep to a good movie if you like wake up really early in the day and have a long day. Because I fell asleep to Frozen once after waking up at 5 in the morning and I watched it at midnight. Jesus. So it is possible to fall asleep.
Game every time
I was actually going to say that. I said we need to do a shot every time Frozen's mentioned.
All I have is like mint extract.
Oh Lord.
And non-alcoholic margarita mix.
But if we're doing a whole shot every time we mention,
you're all going to die by the end of the episode. But a couple of things. Jake Lloyd, great in Jingle All the Way, cinematic masterpiece.
Jingle All the Way.
I like that movie.
Worst
Sinbad's
Christmas
in that.
film.
Sinbad's.
Yeah, Sinbad's hilarious in that movie. It's a masterpiece of cinema.
no one's ever said Sinbad is hilarious.
Women be shopping.
I bet Sinbad's mom thinks he's funny.
More
shot in Minnesota, Mall of America.
More entertaining than this entire movie is the Conan O'Brien Triumph the Insult Comet Dog skit about the Phantom Menace opening.
I do remember that. That was funny.
Interesting enough, there was someone cut from the footage of that ended up on the DVD special features of Triumph the Insult Comet Dog. A guy named Maul Stanley who combined Paul Stanley makeup with Darth Maul makeup. Also, rest in peace to the greatest Twitter account of all time, Paul Stanley, PAWL.
All of these variants of Paul Stanley sound better than the original, but we're doing that episode later today,
Yes,
Greg.
we're ranking our Paul Stanleys later today.
Hold your horses.
Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn is great. The pod racing sequence is awesome. I thought the entire Gungan, society, take out Jar Jar, I thought that was actually cool visually and just cool in terms of, their technology. I thought they were interesting.
There's always a bigger fish. Twice.
Darth Maul looks cool. One of the best lightsaber fights in the series. But you know what? As the token, quarter Jewish person on the panel, I'm going to bring up Watto for a second.
Please do. Wait, I got a drop for that.
Is the remarkably sexist drivel spouted by intentional, or is it just a horrible mistake?
I guess that's more about Natalie Portman than Watto.
Right, but Watto and Jar Jar Binks are very obvious racist caricatures. Watto being aggressive, here is this greedy person with the hook nose. That's just bad, but it's so bad that I find it kind of amusing. But also, is it a coincidence that people, who grew up with those movies are now becoming part of the alt-right? Who knows? Anyway, that's my thoughts on Phantom Menace. It's bad, like the other movies.
At the time, there was a really good Onion article where they were talking about, George Lucas excited to introduce new Gungan character, Aunt Jar Jar Maya.
Oh, is that supposed to be a joke?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because, Jar Jar is, kind of a caricature of,
to be a joke?
black stereotypes.
Yeah, well, I didn't laugh, so.
Oh, I didn't write it. Blame a bunch of different Scotties for it.
Oh, God.
But yeah, do we have any other comments on Phantom Menace other than Jingle All the Way being a better movie? All right,
that one part of the lightsaber duel when they're they go back through that little force field trap area and Darth Maul is panting back and forth and Qui-Gon just kneels down to conserve his energy. That was a cool part.
That was cool.
I'm literally watching this fight right now, and I just got to that scene.
Because at first, you're like, what's he doing? What's he doing? And then you realize, oh, he's fucking conserving his energy or whatever.
He's
right?
meditating. It's a very cool, blending of Eastern philosophies into that moment. It's actually
and it clearly
dramatic.
worked because they died.
Yeah, no, that is a nice little moment because it shows the light versus the dark. Darth Maul is just this dog, I'm going to eat you. I'm so focused. And
then you got the wise, knowledgeable,
Qui-Gon,
and then you got the young, enthusiastic Obi-Wan, right?
Yeah.
It really is. I feel like the trick with that particular lightsaber fight compared to most of the other ones is in the original trilogy, most of the lightsaber fights are either just sort of short and kind of pointless, so they don't really matter. Or
pointless, man.
I mean, like chopping the dude's arm off in the bar,
shit.
not really that important plot-wise.
Hot
That's
take,
not a fight,
Steve.
it's just a fight. It's not a
Hot
fight.
ticks. Right. But so
What a
like
guy.
short. It's a short vignette, just like here's lightsabers, cool. Or they're like not great choreography, but they carry a lot of emotional and plot weight. Like
Yeah,
the fights
that's the thing.
between Luke and
That's
Vader
the whole thing. Yeah.
are
Why don't they just have guns and just shoot each other? Because it's poetic to like fight with a sword, right?
right.
Yeah.
They're not great fights in terms of action cinema, but they're great plot points.
Are you talking about like the old man fight in the A New Hope between Obi-Wan and Vader?
Right, that kind of
like
thing carries a lot of weight.
There's more emotional stakes in that fight. So this is better choreographed than the fights in the original trilogy, but there's not the emotional weight, so it feels more empty.
No,
but
the Darth Maul fight, I think, is like the only fight that gets the good middle ground of like well choreographed and like good use of more modern special effects and carries emotional weight and like actual plot stuff. There's like that one and maybe the one in episode 3, but otherwise like all of the, like if you go to the new trilogy, like they're just fights. Who cares?
Man.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, I just finished the fight. Sorry, Phyllis. I had to like recap.
Or
It's awesome. There was like even a moment I'm like, oh my gosh, Obi-Wan just fell and like, oh, I've always seen this film. I don't know why I had that emotional reaction, but I
Can you
was just
imagine
like,
can you imagine if you had the score cranked and Duel of the Fates and all that stuff? It's great.
oh man, no, that was it. That was especially just recently watching like the new stuff. This was so well done, the choreography and like really getting the like building it up to where like when Obi-Wan's fighting Darth Maul alone, it gets really intense. And then I was like, oh shoot, like I'm already on the edge of my seat and I already know what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
So, good job.
now imagine that scene takes place in a good movie. How awesome is that film?
I know. Well, yeah.
you know, in the future, there's going to be kids who have never seen a Star Wars movie, and you could just show them a clip from this, and like, by the way, this is one of the worst movies, and they're like, what? If this is one of the worst ones, how good are the fights in the best ones? And then they're like, oh wait, those aren't good? What?
Well, yeah.
Well, there's good moments in all of these movies. I mean, they're
Yeah.
great characters. It's a cool story. I mean, there's great moments everywhere. It's just, can you put together like a concise story with great acting, great directing? Like that only happened like 3 or 4 times out of 9 movies, right? But there's great moments in all of these.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and Darth Maul, cool looking character, cool lightsaber. This is just I would say this is legitimately a great moment in like all of cinematic history.
Yeah,
Just-
we're watching it now too.
Yeah.
Man, it's such a good scene.
Yeah.
yeah.
But I still wish they would have kept Darth Maul at
I do
least for
too.
one more movie, at least. Like if I can't, I'd have to rewatch all the movies again. But I remember like when I first saw them, I was just like, that's so weird that they would kill him off because they could have. I honestly felt like he could have lasted to the very last movie in the trilogy, and they could have created a really cool like backstory with him and how he's I don't know. I just remember like they could have done so much more with him, and I just felt so disappointed that they killed him off right then and there. So I was just like,
You could have at least like done what Dooku did in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, he could have
right?
easily
Like-
been the Vader of that trilogy. I mean, I don't see
yeah,
that.
or
I
something.
think that's what they
I
were
don't
trying
know.
to. They were setting that up. It was a
A
it was
bait
a
and
fake
switch.
out. Yeah, it was a bait and switch. Is like, this is going to be the Vader. Oh no, he's not. I was disappointed at the time, but when episode 2 came out and there was way too much Fett and it got real dumb, I fear that if they tried to keep Maul around, he could have succumbed to the same fate.
I think with Darth Maul, they gave you
Maul
just
was
enough
more
of
of a
him.
whipping boy though than Vader. I don't think it would have worked as well.
Yeah, he was
right.
a whipping boy, and also I think it just adds intrigue to the character, where he is a character that like you often think about, and you don't think about lame Darth Maul moments. Like basically every moment with him is pretty cool.
Well, he's
because-
completely one-dimensional. He has nothing to him. Like, there's,
Yeah.
He's like a great Dragon Ball Z character. He's awesome.
Well,
Although
yeah, but
Vader was
I
also a
wanted
whipping boy.
some dimension to him, and I don't know. He doesn't have to be a Darth Vader character per se, but I feel like they definitely could have used him. I don't know, just for something. I'd have to watch it again.
They could
I
put him
remember
in Frozen 3.
Oh man,
Yeah,
that'd be sick.
you know what? Let's bring him back.
I mean, Elsa would destroy him, but that's a topic for another
Okay.
podcast.
What movie did he show? He showed up in Rogue One, right? He showed up at
No,
the end of Rogue One.
he shows up
That's
in.
Vader.
Wasn't
he
it
shows
somewhere
up
in Clone Wars,
in
right?
Solo. He shows up.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, Solo.
With the spider
Yeah.
legs,
Yeah.
or
No,
Vader.
he doesn't do spider legs. I haven't.
Or right.
Yeah, they just pretend like he just didn't die. He just chopped in half, and somehow he's.
no, yeah, like I think he appears in the EU in a couple times with
Like
You
my
no
Yeah.
longer
emperor?
canon, nerd.
Yeah, nerd.
nerd.
No. Okay, but here,
Transition.
Whoops. There we go. That's the drop I was looking for.
Sorry, Christine, you were saying before we interrupt you with a drop.
I know, and then I totally blanked. Oh gosh, what was I gonna say? No, all the nerd stuff. Okay, keep talking, and it'll come to me.
Well, I don't have anything else to say about the Phantom Menace other than Darth Maul's pretty cool.
He
Yep.
is pretty cool. What was I gonna say? I don't know. It'll come back to me.
I don't know. We've been talking for an hour about 2 out of 9
I know,
films.
come on.
Yeah, let's move on to the next one, huh? Hey, gang, next up on the list is another Star Wars movie because we haven't gotten to any of the Rockies yet. Next up on the list is Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, a.k.a. Checklist, the movie. Everything you want to happen in this movie does, except for a good story.
Oh, hot
And
takes.
good, and except for good editing, the editing was horrendous.
Yeah, there was some. There was some
Gosh.
real rough editing, and
It just was so damn fast. Like, can I catch a breath, please? Like, you were throwing so much information at my face, and I just want to breathe, please. No.
Thing with
No.
the thing with that film is that if the people who really, really hated The Last Jedi, they enjoy this film because it negates most of that movie.
it so did. It spent so
And-
much time
One of
doing
the
that.
biggest problems with this movie too is they did that.
Yeah, I think so, but
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I do know several people who thought The Last Jedi was probably the worst movie ever made in the history of film, and
Those same
Yeah,
people
they were-
bitched about every
in the
other
history of Star
being
Wars,
too
I would
predictable.
say.
You know,
They're like, Star Wars is too predictable. Hey, we're going to change things up. You changed it too much. All right, we're going to give you everything you want. This is what I wanted. Thank you.
It
I
wasn't.
think they should have brought Ryan Johnson in to do this movie.
The
Or
rule
Rian,
is-
or however.
The most recent Star Wars and the most recent Weezer album are both the worst thing ever. No matter what that was.
Look, the
Well, I
most
don't
recent
agree with that.
Weezer
I
single is
enjoyed
their
the
best
Rise
song
of
because it's a Frozen
Skywalker.
2 cover.
yeah. So the guy who just said you enjoyed The Rise of Skywalker, can you say why? I'm curious.
Yeah.
Well, don't get me wrong. I had my problems with it, but first of all, I kind of like all of them to a certain extent. But I thought it was kind of cool that they brought the Emperor back, even though
Oh, no.
Oh,
Oh,
the,
gosh.
worst.
the whole.
You murdered this whole podcast.
We are
I
the
don't remember,
younglings, and
just
Bakko
saying
is
that
just
about all your
Anakin.
stupid things you were saying about it.
Okay.
Two movies. I think it was cool, but there was they should have done more with developing Rose. I thought was kind of where they left off with the last movie. I think that was kind of where J.J. Abrams kind of failed a little bit.
No, she had to be
There's
edited
so
out
much campy
because she
shit
was
in
from
here,
the previous
but I don't know.
one.
It flowed good. It was a nice movie, and I don't know. You're asking why I like it. And all I want to talk about is all the shit that I didn't like about it.
that is something.
Somebody who died needed to stay dead. I will say that's one thing that they
Yes.
could have done.
It
You know,
kept on
everybody,
happening.
Chewbacca, C-3PO, fucking what's her name, Rey. They
Right.
all come back.
Yeah.
Every
Also-
one of them.
I hated that.
Some stupid explanation like, oh, hey, it turns out R2 has C-3PO's brain, and
Yeah.
he wasn't on that, even though he fucking clearly was.
Even though we saw him get on it, yeah.
Sorry.
and just for the fun of it, we have 2 minutes to go to another planet, get a fucking fleet of horses,
Yeah.
and have them run across a Star Destroyer. Because
Yeah.
that makes so much sense.
Well, how are they?
Don't forget that we
breathing
threw
in
Kylo
space?
Ren off a cliff
That's
and
it.
he was
Great movie.
fine.
Loved it. 5
Yep.
stars.
Fine. The things here's how I feel about this movie, because I went to see the film with my wife. We always go see Star Wars stuff together, and afterwards I was like, "Did you like it?" She's like, "Yeah, it was enjoyable. It was fine." And I said, "Well, do you like The Last Jedi?" And she's like, "What was that? Which movie was that?" But so I feel like if you're one of those people who's casual about it, that you don't even know it enough to know what happened in the last one, you don't care that much that you even remember, you just go in just for fun, then it's fine, it's enjoyable. And that's how the average moviegoer is. That's why if you look on Rotten Tomatoes or somewhere, the audience score is way higher in this film than the critical score, because it's a fun film, because it is fast-paced. But if you start actually thinking about it, how it ties into other films and how there are all these actual issues with it as a movie itself, then that's where it all breaks down. But it is fun.
I like this one a lot. I would put this one.
How Kylo basically just escapes any accountability for the fucking horrible shit he's been doing.
He dies at the end.
Kept his helmet in a pile of ashes.
What accountability? He dies at the end. He dies.
Well,
Yeah, but he dies redeemed.
Come on, man. He should have to fucking face some consequences.
You mean like
he dies
Vader?
a hero.
He can come back as a Force ghost or whatever.
Dude,
Vader did the exact same thing. He dies redeemed even though he did a bunch of terrible things.
That's true.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well,
I like this one.
yeah, but I was 13 then, man.
I like this one a lot. I put this one as probably my favorite outside of the original trilogy. This is probably my fourth favorite of the 9. And I say that because there's lots of Chewie in it, which I love. That's why I kind of put it a little bit above Force Awakens. Like
Wookiee.
Chewie playing chess is great. Getting mad at Finn when the Falcon is on fire was great. And I always love when Chewie tries to fix things and no one's helping him and he kind of gets a little upset, right? That's great. And that part where they're trying to blend into the festival and Chewie is trying to duck down, that was great, right? Like, so there's all kinds of... That moment where Chewie hears of Leia's death and he just screams and drops to his knees. Like, I really identify with that, right? Like, so there's some great moments here. I was almost going to walk out in the film when they killed Chewie. Like, that was bullshit. And, I didn't like that. Then they kind of just reversed the death with the old, the second transport move. But
Chewbacca died in 9/11 anyway, so it's fine.
At the end. Come on, give it to me.
What?
Like, that did it to me. Like, I don't watch trailers or follow speculation on any of these films and stuff like that. And I didn't expect him to show up. So, like, that little moment there where he says, hey, kid. And I'm like, oh, my God, is that Han Solo? I was like, oh, my God. I almost had tears in my eyes, And then at the end where he calls him dad and he goes, I know. Like, that's fucking cool. Come on, man.
No, that's
a
great moment.
The guy who asked what I liked about the movie, what Lee said.
Problems, right? But there's some great moments, right? Like C-3PO is funny. That part where he's talking about the festival and
dialogue is so good.
They all look at him, and then he kind of like does the look behind, like, "What are you guys looking at?" Right? Like, that stuff is great.
C-3PO, it really is one of the best parts of the movie.
Yeah.
And, it's a shame that they didn't give him more to do in the other films and that they sidelined R2-D2 as well. But I think that's a critique of this trilogy in general, where they were like, we don't need R2-D2. We're just going to do BB-8. And like everything is just a copy of something else, as to where you could have just used R2-D2 and you don't need.
Yeah, but you don't get to sell a new toy.
I think and honestly, that is what it comes down to, because I read that there's something, I think, with the licensing where they don't get the same kind of royalties Disney doesn't off of the original characters as they would, so they create these new ones that are similar ones to make money. So, I mean, it's a corporation. There are those things, but if you think about it from a film perspective, it does suck seeing another new droid in this latest film, as to where it could have just been R2-D2.
I didn't get the love romances at all. It didn't make sense to me. Like, I never got any of that between Rey and Kylo, that they were crushing on each other. So that kiss at
that was
the end
pointless.
really threw me off.
So
they kind of put it in The Last Jedi. Like,
the whole movie, like, Finn is trying to tell her that he likes her and all.
Yeah, I know.
It's just weird. And then he's got that thing flirting with like Lando's illegitimate daughter, or whatever. So that's
Lando is flirting with his illegitimate daughter.
Yeah, I did like that exchange where it was like he sits down with this woman, is like, "Hey, who are you? We should find out. Am I your dad? In which case, we should have some Colt 45 to celebrate, family reunions. If not, we should have some Colt 45 for other reasons."
Oh God!
Did anybody else notice that, like, Finn, when he says, "Ray, I have to tell you something," and they never got back.
Yeah, they never say it again.
Yeah.
Which the assumption is that he was either going to tell her that he's force sensitive, or that
he loves her,
or he's in love with her.
J.J. Abrams, nerd alert, has gone on record as saying that was what it is, that he was force sensitive.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
I choose to believe that he loves Poe.
Like,
I thought J.J. Abrams just
say that to somebody like right before they're going to die.
That's odd. She's like, okay, cool. I don't care. I'm dying.
Yeah. Maybe that's why he didn't go back to it. It is kind of stupid.
Well, that's why I thought it was supposed to be his feelings for her, right? It's like, oh shoot, I don't want to die without telling you, like, I really liked you,
For
right?
sure.
Like that's because I mean, where's the payoff for him setting up in the very first movie that he liked her, right? And then she kind of was like, well, I'm open to it, but I'm not sure. They never paid that off in this last movie,
which is weird because you think J.J. Abrams is so good with payoff all the time. Like the end of Lost.
Well, that's the issue though, and that's the issue with them not having with changing directors and changing writers is that the first film sets up Finn's interested in Rey, then the second one's like, nah, Rey and Kylo may be a thing, and then the third one's kind of like, I don't know what the hell.
So here's
they had that threesome hug with Poe at the end, right? So that was kind of cool.
Well, and actually, I did want to kind of
That's what he was trying to say. It was like, Rey, I'm Polly.
I did want to kind of touch on that because a lot of the marketing was talking about how in this movie is like, well, we really want to get the big three together. We want to get Finn and Poe and Rey together, and they do have a lot of time in this movie, but it comes out of nowhere. I think in the previous two films, they're never on the screen at the same time. So they're like, oh, there's this big friendship between the three of them. It's like, where did it come from? Mm-hmm. And so that's one of my issues with this movie is that it wants to act like certain things happened when they really didn't.
So I would compare this movie to Disc 2 of Xenogears.
I don't know.
Would you now, Greg?
Yes,
Tell us all about it. All right, so who's talking next?
Yeah.
Who's got opinions about Star Wars?
I have some notes on things to say. The opening crawl, how much happens in between the movies is really ridiculous, where the first line is, the dead speaks. Palpatine's back. That happens off screen.
Yes.
Tell, don't show, Greg.
Is absolutely terrible. The dark fight with Rey, pretty cool. With evil Rey, that was pretty cool. Leia turning into Lassie was a little bit awkward. Like, what's that, Leia? You saying I need to train more?
Yes, that was
what's that, Leia? You're saying you don't agree with me going? Well, I'm still going to go. Okay. That was... You did the best you could with that situation, but Lassie Leia was really awkward for me. I liked how this turned into Twilight, and they just had that super emo kiss at the end, and then he just vanishes. That was kind of fun. The water fight was actually cool.
That was cool. Yeah.
It's a nice parallel to the lava fight at the end of the prequel trilogy. So mirrors. Palpatine, hamming it up. Great performance. His writing is dumb.
He's dumb. Why is he back from the dead?
That makes the movie incomprehensible.
He always comes back from the dead.
But that ruins the whole.
I've died 1,000 times.
That makes all 9 movies about Palpatine rather than anybody else, and that's
he is awesome though. I know, it's kind of stupid that it does devalue the sacrifice Vader made and everything like that, and they don't explain it, but. Come on, he is a powerful motherfucker.
No,
I want Palpatine to be cloned and come back from the dead in a comic book.
He's lasted all these guys.
Here's what I would say.
He's the best, man. Come on. Every scene he's in, he captivates you, right?
He chews the scenery. He does a great job. But here's what I'll say. JJ set up a bunch of mystery boxes in Force Awakens that weren't actually interesting. And Rian Johnson came up with better ideas. And then JJ decided... Yeah, but I like my ideas from that first movie, so I'm going to ignore your ideas from that movie.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
And so that's how we end up here.
What clearly happened.
Yeah.
But I want to say something really strong and powerful and thematic did come from this movie, which is Rey's decision of identity. Where I think having her parents all of a sudden not being nobodies who sold her for booze money, I think makes her character less interesting. I think the idea of Rey coming from nothing is actually consistent with the lore of Star Wars, since freaking Anakin had a virgin birth and came from nowhere. So why Anakin can come from nowhere but Rey can't is, I think, silly.
I think you were mixing metaphors there. In that Anakin literally came from nothing, and that made him special because he was a magical baby. Whereas Rey came from figurative nothing, where it's just her parents weren't anybody that matters.
People saying you can't be force sensitive if you're not a Kenobi or a Skywalker or a Palpatine.
Well, yeah, that's dumb.
That's sending a bad message. The movie negated an interesting idea that you can be special just because you can be special. But this was but who's your dad though?
Right, but here's what I want to get back to that though.
Who's your daddy and what does he do?
The thing is, I
That's what they thought back then.
there are a lot of people I know who have, issues with family and identity and, coming from parents that you're not necessarily proud of. And the idea of choosing your own identity, like people who choose to take the last name of their adoptive parents rather than their birth parents, because, I know people like that and I know how important that search for identity is. And so Rey choosing to take on the identity of Rey Skywalker, I thought was actually a very good message that would resonate with a lot of people. And I thought that was good. I just don't like the steps that they took to get there. But I thought that message was actually very profound and something I give a big thumbs up to in this movie that I don't
Says Greg Troyan II.
Can I jump off of that for just 1 second? So, sorry, I'm bad with names. Who was the which one of the panelists is the one that said you really liked? Rise of Skywalker. Lee. Okay, Lee. I got a question for you, Lee. So, here's my biggest issue with this film, with making Rey the granddaughter of Palpatine, and the end, Ben Solo dying. It doesn't matter what she chooses to call herself or not. Palpatine ultimately kind of gets what he wanted. His lineage is the only one to go on. So if you think about it, Palpatine kind of won. What do you feel about that? Have you thought about that? And have you thought, that kind of ruins
the thing was like he was trying to get her to kill him so he could transfer his soul into her, right? And isn't that what she actually did? Right?
No,
like,
so dumb.
Like even though she said she wasn't going to do it, right? Like at the end of the day, she actually did kill him with the two lightsaber kind of thing, right? So maybe he actually is inside of her.
Episode 10, The Return of Palpatine.
There you go, man. Yeah, so I don't know, like.
But it goes back to what I said earlier. So then it makes everything sort of about Palpatine, and ultimately he kind of, his lineage goes on. That's the only Jedi lineage now. It's like, the Skywalkers are dead.
He's the godmother, man.
Well, I guess the idea is that the lineage of ideas being more important than the lineage of blood. To have the ideas of the Skywalkers and the Jedi continue, even if the lineage biologically of the Sith is what remains, having the lineage of the Jedi being what continues,
but that's
I think is more important.
But that's why Skywalker's
there he goes. Keep it in church, man.
But that's why Skywalker's a dumb film then, because then it shits all over the original idea of you can just be special no matter who your parents are. So that's that's a contradictory thing.
That was Rian Johnson's idea, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe JJ was like, I wasn't going with that.
I know.
Like, so I blame the producer. Like, what's her name? Kathleen something
Kathleen
like that?
Kennedy, yeah.
Like, if you look at the Marvel guys, what's that guy's? Kevin Feige?
Kevin Feige, yeah.
Like, the way he produced all those movies to this final, like, climax was perfect, right? Like, and I don't think she did a good job with these three sequels in doing that, right? Like, because it's like they contradict each other and the stories just... Like, there's all these, like, side plots, and it's just a mess otherwise with stories and stuff like that. But, we're not going to Star Wars for, like, great literature and great stories. We're going there for fun and great moments and, having fun with these characters. So, I don't know. I love it because of these character moments.
And political debates.
And stuff like that. Like, come on.
Trade
should we get
wars.
that medal at the end? Oh, my God. Like, another...
come on. I was like, fuck off.
Oh, God, and there's hands.
You still care about that? Jesus.
Dude, come on. Like, Princess Leia dies with Han's medal in her hand.
And then Chewie gets the...
finally pass that over to Chewie.
I thought that was
so cheesy. I don't know.
He didn't actually
I thought that was...
Checklist the movie, like how there's a single shot of an Ewok to be like, hey, guys, Ewoks are in this.
Greg, you're off mic.
That's wicked.
Yeah.
I think I literally gasped when that happened. I was like, Jesus Christ. Seriously?
I actually like that. I like that.
What's wrong with that? That's cold. You guys are cold.
I actually like that, yeah.
I thought that was cheesy.
It was very cheesy.
That's for all you fucking nerds that fucking bitch about Chewie not getting a medal? Jesus fuck.
Well, he should have got a fucking
movies ago.
He should have got a medal.
Okay.
And his special
no participation trophies in Star Wars.
Passed down, man. His fallen.
But Chewie contributed. He actually did a lot. Does Chewie deserve a medal? Yes. But is it dumb that people still care? Yes.
He doesn't even speak English.
Well, okay, but here's the thing.
That is a rule of the galaxies.
It's not dumb.
You don't get medals if you don't speak the language.
Sure.
No, someone made a good point on YouTube. I was watching some commentary on YouTube about like early Star Wars. It doesn't make sense for Chewie to get a medal because okay, so the only reason why we care is because we, as the audience, seeing the very first movie, was like, oh, hey, like, that's kind of a dick move, right? Like, he fought with them, right? So but the
I didn't even
audience
hear about that till the 2000s.
Yeah, well, but it's only the audience that cares. It's not the actual character, right? And so it doesn't make sense for Leia to be like, "Oh, hey, by the way, I forgot. Here's your medal that came in the mail like way too late, like years later." It only that scene was only for the people, the audience, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't for the character.
Medal. It was Han's medal. When Leia lies down to like reach out to her son, right? She's holding something in her hand, and that's Han's medal because Han had just died, right? So she's holding Han's medal that he got in Star Wars. And then when Chewie dies, whoever that girl Maz Kanata or whatever, I guess she got it. She knew what it was. So this is Han's medal. I'm going to give this to Chewie because that's who should have it.
Here's what I'll say: they did the intellectual. They did the intellectual backflips to make that make sense in the movie. So they did end up doing that, but I think ultimately they mainly did it for the fan service moment of finally giving Chewie a medal.
Of course.
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
So why? I don't know.
It's not like they're presenting him a medal for being a war hero 20 years ago. They're just passing on, a belonging of his fallen friend, which is beautiful. And it's got like some symbolic, symbolism.
They're trying to make some Canuck cry.
It worked.
In fact, I think you convinced me that I like it now. I like them.
Yeah, I had missed the connection where it was Han's medal.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I did.
I'm fine with that.
I will say if it was Han's, then it's different.
I caught it and I still didn't care.
I definitely got the connection, but still cheese this shit.
So the one bit of fan service from this film that I found kind of disappointing was
Lando?
No, Lando was cool. I feel like there was a bit of setup where they had Rey encounter Dark Rey, who's wielding, a red double-sided lightsaber, and then later on they give Rey 2 lightsabers before she goes and has her like great internal battle to decide if she's going to be a good guy or a bad guy. And they didn't have any payoff in terms of like, hey, maybe 2 lightsabers can be a double-sided lightsaber if they want to be cool about it. But nope, they were just like, we have 2 lightsabers so that Kylo Ren can also fight too. Hooray!
Yeah, pretty much.
That was cool though because it was his mother's lightsaber that he was using. That's pretty awesome.
I mean, it's fine for Kylo Ren to get it.
Lightsabers the whole time. Fan service.
Yeah. Okay. Oh gosh.
Why does Leia have a lightsaber?
Dumb.
Luke was training her, right? Like right after Jedi. They have that flashback.
I'm actually cool with that because you got to think about it.
You guys don't like that?
Yeah,
canon.
But in the 30-year gap, like, why wouldn't she have learned? I mean
she was force sensitive.
What do you mean?
She gave it up, right? She gave it up during her training, so she wasn't really skilled.
How about this? If she did, why wouldn't we already know?
I don't know. I mean, like, but doesn't
there'd be
really
no reason for it, because she didn't pursue being a Jedi because her heart was with the rebellion and being a general and being military.
I think
and
I
she
just
gave up
figured it
like
out.
the training because she had these visions of her son dying or whatever, right? So that's why.
Yeah, I'm not against Leia. Like, obviously, she's force sensitive, right? She's a twin, but like, I don't know. Like, to me, it's like it seems like she wanted to be a general. She also wanted to be a mom. I mean, she obviously got together with Han and they started a family. That takes up a lot of your time. And then, like, the rest of her time was devoted to the rebellion.
But you can also tell that in The Force Awakens, JJ wasn't planning on her being force sensitive at that point, probably, because she never does anything.
No, I don't think that I don't believe that she took a lot of time, because it took a lot of time for Luke to like really learn the ways of the Jedi and become really good at it, right?
I
don't
really
think
good
she
at it.
took a long time out of her life.
He moved one X-wing with his mind, and then was kind of like, I'm good.
Yeah, it's all about facing demons within yourself, and that's how you progress that in Empire. Right?
I'm just saying, like, it takes a while to train as a Jedi, and I don't believe that she devoted that time to do it because she was starting a family and because she became a general in the rebellion, right? So I just don't see it.
I think
there's different levels of Jedis, right? Some people are just natural at it, like Anakin Skywalker, and they don't have to work at it. And some people have to work at it, right? It's like playing guitar. Some people are born with a gift. Some people have to practice.
True.
So it's like,
Was that a shot, Lee?
I think it's, and I'm not trying to put down my own gender, but I think they're really, really trying to be like as equal as possible between men and women in their portrayals of this film. Of like, oh, see, like, look at all these badass girls,
Of course,
pretty much equal proportion. I feel like that's the only reason why they gave Leia like, oh yeah, actually, like I'm a freaking badass Jedi now. Really?
Well, the
like,
trick is,
like one of two women in the first trilogy. So, but
you compare.
it's funny that the most misogynist person on this panel is the only female.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's 'cause she can get away with it. But the Force powers escalated. Really, there was a huge escalation in what the Force can do in this particular film with Rey and Kylo Ren, casually tossing around spacecraft and healing people. So, like, comparatively to that, you know, the fact that Finn can fight with a lightsaber in the previous JJ film, we're not to that point, just mentioning it casually, and like Leia being able to float through space and being able to detect people across distance, that's just what a Force sensitive can do with the amount that the Force has escalated in power by this film.
You know what I did
that's
like?
not Jedi, that's just Force sensitive.
I did like when Rey was like trying to hold the transport, then all of a sudden she shot lightning out of her fingers like the Emperor, which is like showing that she's got like some Sith bloodlines. Hey, that's kind of cool.
But how fucking cool would that have been if she was responsible for Chewie dying?
I think I think they should have gone that.
They should have
lived with it.
They should have done that.
No.
Just a heavy moment.
I was ready to walk her to the theater, man.
Good.
Come on.
That was like the one interesting plot point. I'm like, oh, okay. Now you're doing something creative. Gosh.
Give Chewie his medal posthumously.
Yeah.
You don't kill Chewie.
The whole movie was a gotcha. Like, oh, you thought Chewie's dead? Gotcha. He's not.
It was the lamest gotcha ever. It was just like,
yeah.
I mean, once again, Chewie died in 9/11, so just let him stay dead.
Stupid jokes.
I don't know. You've said that twice.
That was in the extended universe books. There was an enemy type called the Yuzhen Vong, whose tactic was to crash planets into ships into planets.
Expanded universe.
And Chewbacca died in one of those attacks shortly before 9/11. And then suddenly, after 9/11, the Yuzhen Vong were no longer written about in the Star Wars universe.
So here's what I'm going to say.
Oh.
That feels like fan fiction, as does Rise of Skywalker. Basically, the movies that JJ made feel like Star Wars fan fiction rather than actual Star Wars films to me. And speaking of JJ Star Wars films, next up on the list is The Force Awakens.
I absolutely hate this movie. Even though I didn't rank it as my bottom, I hate it more than any other movie. Because I think the Rise of Skywalker is bad, and I think there's a lot of bad things in The Last Jedi as well, because The Last Jedi has to go off on its own path, but those are all because of the terrible choices that JJ made in setting up this whole deal with you kill Han, you don't really give him anything to do.
I hated that.
You start him off in the exact same position you start him off in A New Hope, where he's just regressed after 30 years to being the same thing. Everyone's just a mirror image of other characters. There's nothing interesting going on. It's just
there's no creativity.
Blah.
At
it's
all.
just blah.
I really want to jump in with what I think is the big flaw of this movie is I actually like Rey as a character from Last Jedi onwards, but I think in this movie in particular, she is a Mary Sue. And that she is really good at the Force and piloting, even though she has no experience. And all of the characters from the original story want to hang out with her because she's just that cool. She's a Mary Sue, and I don't like how poorly they wrote that character because, as evidenced in the other two films, she became really interesting, really dynamic. This feels like bad Star Wars fanfiction from fanfiction.net, except I've read better stuff on fanfiction.net than The Force Awakens.
Counterpoint, Luke sucked in episode 4.
Yes, he did. But he wasn't good at things initially in episode 4. Like, he sucked at everything and then got better. But like, Rey was good right away at things. Like, why is she so awesome? And why does everyone want to hang out with her?
In the meta, Luke sucked in episode 4 just like he was like an uninteresting, whiny, annoying character. Rey, in the meta, sucked in her first episode.
Yes, and I would actually say that Rey is a better character overall than Luke Skywalker. I think she's more dynamic. Well,
because Episode 7 is A New Hope Part 2, so of course they have to recreate everything, including us not liking the main character because they're boring and dumb.
But I think it was JJ setting up a mystery box without actually knowing what the mystery would be, and I think that's just bad writing.
The J is for genius.
Right.
The other J is also for genius.
I think if you're going to write a mystery, as a writer, you should know what the answer to that mystery is before you write. Like, you shouldn't just like, what could this be? You as the writer should know and build up to it. And I really think he just set up a bunch of things like, wouldn't this be cool? What's this going to be? What's this going to be? And didn't actually think about where the series would go.
Well, yeah, the whole movie is like, well, I gotta have my Darth Vader, that's Kylo. I gotta have my Emperor, that's Snoke. I gotta have my Luke Skywalker, that's Rey. And originally, I read the original idea for Poe was for him to die in the first one, but I think that they were just like, wait a minute though, this is kind of a Han Solo thing we got going on with this charismatic, like handsome dude, like. So we're gonna keep him around, and
he's arguably maybe my favorite character in the new trilogy because he is charismatic and he's funny and witty and he's enjoyable to watch.
But he doesn't. Ultimately, though, I feel like these are things that...
Is Finn Leia, then? Oh, no.
Kinda, yeah.
Sort of, yeah.
Well, they wanted... I mean, there's so many people online like, oh, I want them to be gay with each other. And I was just like, I mean... I don't know.
Well, that was part of what I was talking.
So cookie cutter to me.
That was part of what I was talking about earlier, where a lot of the media was saying, about Poe and Finn and then Rey all being buddies and stuff together, but you don't really see that in The Force Awakens.
No, you don't.
The only thing you see is Finn and Rey have a thing. And
I mean, Finn and Poe had some chemistry.
Yeah, they had some chemistry. They escaped together.
It was a buddy chemistry.
Yeah, it's a bromance.
I really hated when people were like, oh no, it's literally like a romance. I'm like, no, it's a bromance. Okay, come on, guys.
Yeah, I understand bromance. I mean, Steve Smith and I have a pretty heavy bromance, so I mean...
But Finn is I think he's the most interesting new character because he is a turned stormtrooper. Like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But the movies don't ever do anything with that. They never go anywhere with it.
People shout traitor at him a lot.
Well, the whole start of the film was based on that scene, right? That was great. That whole attack on Brewmeister Smith from Strange Brew's little village there, and that thing where Kylo Ren comes down and
the Canuck.
Yeah, somebody shoots at him and he like force freezes like one of the fucking laser beams right in the air while he like has his little discussion and he leaves and he lets
very
it go.
Dragon Ball-esque moment, pretty awesome.
Oh, that was so great, right?
But
and he kind of just gives a look over to Finn there because he can sense something on this stormtrooper, right?
Isn't that frustrating though that there's this cool concept but nothing comes from it?
Well, what do you want to come from it, man? This is Star Wars. Like I said, we got some great moments again, and we got like a story full of like holes, right? Like so, like come on, Han Solo stealing the show right until that spoiled brat killed him. Like that scene where him and Chewie walk on the Falcon. Another tear-rolling moment. Right, so great to see a gray-haired Han Solo, but still wearing like the striped pants and the jacket and all that stuff. Right, it's so fucking badass.
In the future, like they only have one set of clothes too. Everybody is.
Yeah.
That scene with Rey and Finn escaping those the stormtroopers or whatever that attack, and they get in the Millennium Falcon and they're flying amongst the desert shipwrecked Star Destroyers. Like that was badass, right? So there's great moments like that,
And the clothing thing is what I was talking about. Like you take Han and you put him 30 years older, and then you're like put him in the exact same scenario with the same clothes. It's just silly. Like there's no growth.
It's dumb.
Oh, that's a style, man. He's wearing the same clothes.
Okay.
Hey, when you find a look, you
just okay.
Yeah, it's just outer space.
I think it's about character progression and growth. It feels like the character unnaturally regressed in a way that doesn't make sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's why I think Luke in Last Jedi, which we'll get to later, is an intelligent character progression because it makes sense how he would respond to the events that happened.
But we're missing 20 years in there, right? Like, so you had Han Solo who had this like family life with Leia and he's raising this kid Ben who wants to be a Jedi. So he sends him off to Uncle Luke's Jedi Academy, and he starts fucking things up, and he starts killing people. And then Leia and Han start fighting and stuff like that. And then Han takes off with his buddy Chewie, and he's like, "Fuck it, man! I'm just gonna go sell spices, go spice running again."
But Han's a war hero at this point. He's a famous war hero. Like, he's not gonna just
famous in the galaxy. That doesn't last for long, man.
Okay.
I like how Luke Skywalker isn't still wait a minute.
And as much as like I will not I will, because I know that Greg really likes The Last Jedi, and I will pose some opposition to that for him. but one of my main issues with people say, well, where they took Luke's character in Last Jedi was really bad, but I'm like, JJ didn't give many options with where he ended Luke in Force Awakens, and that's where I hate the portrayal of Han, but I also hate the portrayal of Luke, because you lead up to this MacGuffin search for a man, which is crazy because they're like tracking like a map to a guy who can move at any moment. He doesn't like doesn't mean he's stuck on this one spot. He can actually go wherever he wants to go.
Yeah,
and just has to leave a forwarding address.
Yeah, he just didn't. They didn't do anything. They get there with him, build up, and then nothing.
Not the proper paperwork.
Yeah,
you gotta have the cliffhanger, man. What do you want? You gotta have the cliffhanger for part 2.
I wanted Luke to be in the film, and I wanted something.
Yeah, well, he was. Well, I think they had that played out. They had to have that moment at the end, because that was another great moment too, where she just hands the lightsaber to him, and you just see his face.
Yeah, and then he tosses it. I'll save it. I'll save it.
He's gonna toss it. That was the other director's slap in the face. But like the movie ends with like you don't know what he's gonna do. And
sure.
I loved it.
What else could he possibly do other than toss it? Because he's gonna be like, "Oh, cool."
He could become the character he is in the current movie, where it's like all of a sudden I care again.
He's like, I'm glad. You know what? I was a recluse for years, but you convinced me that I'm gonna go and fight with my laser sword. Thanks. I don't know what I was doing.
I will say, I think Rey, Finn, and Poe, because you meet them very early in this movie, from their face. From their actual faces and their names to their character are very uninteresting, forgettable people. That was my biggest problem with this. It was like you found kind of almost like generic looking and sounding things. It didn't really pop like it did with other characters. And I'm typically always going back to the original trilogy when I compare that shit. But they developed longer and became better characters as it went on. But right away, my first impression walking away from this was that like I really found them not that interesting as people, and I think their characters and the actors who portrayed them didn't really deliver in this movie.
Well, they're trying to like modernize these characters to appeal to millennials and like people past
millennials,
right?
People who have no distinct facial features and have names that are easily forgotten.
We like our heroes with no personality.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's no personality.
I work with a lot of millennials. They're deeper than that, man. They're deeper.
Yeah, it's not even millennials. It's like, who's after millennials? Gen Z? Yeah, it's Gen Z. They're catering to Gen Z. Gen Z has the attention span that's less than a goldfish. It's like 5 seconds or something, which is why the editing is just so damn fast and just like it doesn't make sense. It's like they just want all action. They don't really care about character development, relationship development, as long as you throw in some cool lightsaber moments and
I don't think that's true at all.
It's a pretty broad generalization. Yeah. I think you've just alienated a lot of people.
Yeah, I feel like if anything, that's what
you're the biggest misogynist on the show, and now you're also just like
just a huge ageist.
You blanket statement everybody, don't you?
I'm actually Palpatine's real daughter.
Yeah. What a twist!
I want to know where Kylo Ren got his granddaddy's helmet. Right, like so that little smashed up Darth Vader.
I know everything blew up, but somehow that remained sort of intact.
Presumably, he killed all the Ewoks and took it.
Well, Luke burned his father's death right before he joined the party on Endor. Right after the Death Star blew up. So I guess Luke saved that. Right, and like when Luke is training Kylo at his Jedi Academy, he probably had it like behind his desk, like as a trophy or something like that, right?
Yeah, like opens a lower drawer, that big one that's always at the bottom.
Yeah,
there you go,
buddy. On it, yeah.
Is it junk drawer?
I want that thing, man.
Hey, Master Luke, what's up with that weird paperweight you've always got? It smells really bad. like burnt flesh and
What's
cyborgs.
my dad's head?
You know, everybody's got their dad's head in a drawer.
Speaking of something really bad involving burnt flesh and cyborgs, next up on the list is Revenge of the Sith.
No,
I can't believe this is this high. Come on.
Oh, that's what...
Dude, I actually ranked this, I think, my number 3.
Wait, yeah, what number is this, by the
This-
way?
Number 3 from you. What actual number is this? Greg?
right in the middle.
Yeah, so
Right
we're
in the middle of
1,
the Star
2,
Warses.
3, 4. We're 5 spots up. We still haven't gotten to any of the Rocky movies that are ranking above
Oh,
these.
gee.
I ranked it number 5.
Because this is by far, everybody says this is by far the best of the prequel trilogy. And I just, to me, it plays out. There's some silliness with it, but it plays out better than, for me, even if I'm not looking at nostalgia, better than A New Hope. Just because story-wise, there's a really interesting parallel there between the Padawan that it doesn't work and he turns evil, and then they've had Obi-Wan and Anakin have this relationship that's been built up over several films, and that comes to a head, and that's just a interesting thing. And the acting is much better in this movie than the previous two, I believe.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Plus lava fight.
And Lava Fight is
Lava
cool.
Fight's
As long as
pretty
you're not
cool.
talking about Natalie Portman, I agree.
Well, she's got nothing to do in this movie.
Because she doesn't have anything to work with, yeah.
Well, there's that scene at the end where she goes, Luke, Leia. And everyone goes,
Yeah, I hated that. No, when she's giving birth, yeah. That was...
She does rock the hair buns, though. The hair buns is pretty
And she
hot.
died of a broken heart, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, that was
But
bad.
as with
Not
episodes 1 and 2, though,
complications of childbirth. twins.
Well, it's because medical technology is really good. They couldn't really justify the complications of birth when they could have just had her do like a water birth and a Bacta tank.
yeah,
Solid take.
And I think me defending it, I'm not saying like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, because every one of these movies has some stupid stuff in it. So I think I am like justifying a few things just to say it's better than some of the other films, because it is cool. And the lava fight is cool. The whole higher ground thing is kind of dumb. But other than that, it's pretty cool to see Anakin get all chopped apart.
it definitely picks up. Like the
Damn.
last hour is fucking great. Like from the moment Palpatine reveals to Anakin his motive and that he's kind of the bad guy, like the film just picks up right with like Palpatine and that Mace Windu fight there, where we see him. He uses lightning and he blows Mace Windu out the window, right?
Hey.
And I always I love the Emperor character, right? So it's cool to see him like actually go so dark and evil, right? And he starts using that like Emperor voice, which is pretty cool. Right?
He is so overacting in that scene that it's I think unintentionally hilarious.
The fight with Yoda at the end there, where it's like Anakin and Obi-Wan are fighting, and Yoda and Palpatine are fighting, and he's like, they're all like bouncing around that that Senate area or whatever.
Throwing the Senate at each other.
Yeah, but we got let's just get up into it right now, right? So at the end of the movie, right after Anakin's like this lava, fiery, burning mess, like the Emperor picks him up and is going to put him back together, right? And so I was so fucking excited when I saw like, oh, okay, we're going to get the Vader moment here, right? So in the theater when I first saw it, you see the final stages, the mask being put on his face, right? The first mechanical breath. Then we get this like Frankenstein like rise on the operating table, right? And I'm like, all this stuff rules, and I'm thinking, wow, like Lucas has redeemed himself for all these sequels, right? And then Vader starts talking, right? And then you get the
It's like James Earl Jones forgot how to talk like Darth Vader.
Do not want.
Becomes probably the worst moment in all 9 movies, the whole saga, probably the worst moment, and it's so frustrating because there was just all this potential, and the last hour was so good, and this moment just kills it, right? Just horrible.
I mean,
Yeah, I
we use it as a
totally
drop
agree.
on our show. That's how great it is.
Oh, you do have that drop? Can I hear that drop?
Maybe. Where do I have it categorized? I think it's under disagreement.
Fine.
Don't talk like that. Don't talk like that.
I'll go build my own.
That's fine.
Talk like that.
Blackjack. And
But that,
I don't know.
That goes back to the thing I was saying about George Lucas isn't a great writer, so everything's like looking cool and it's awesome. You're like, oh, you're getting Vader, and then he ruins it by a stupid line.
He
And,
should have just like not said anything.
yeah,
Like,
I would have been way better if he just didn't say, like, he just
Or we
looked
just
cool.
wrecked some stuff.
Yeah.
If he just like threw a Kylo Ren-esque tantrum.
He should have wrapped up with his mind or whatever. That would have
been cool.
Right?
Yeah.
But then I like the scene where you see them walk on the bridge of the Star Destroyer, and you see them looking at the Death Star, and you see like a Grand Moff Tarkin looking guy standing beside him.
You guys all have much stronger opinions on this one than I do. I put this one right about in the middle because I was like, yeah, this was exactly what the previous two films required it to be. No more, no less. It's the Matrix Revolutions of the prequel trilogy.
Oh, no, man. It's way better than that.
Well,
Matrix Revolutions was also fine.
And I have such a strong opinion because I hated the other two so much. And then I'm watching this one. I'm going, holy shit, this one's good. So...
this one actually felt like it belonged to the original trilogy. I mean, it still had issues, but at least it felt like a real Star Wars film.
Like, it still looks like shit, like way too much CGI. Like, you don't even know where to focus, right? Like, some of those space bot battles, there's like hundreds of ships, and it's so distracting. Like, even the scenes with the actors and there's dialogue, there's all this nonsense in the background that distracts you, like some stupid space creature sticking his tongue out or farting for some juvenile comedy relief garbage.
Because it's a movie for kids.
Yeah, because it's kids. It's a kids movie. And I do think Lucas does the dark sides better than the light sides, and and this movie has more of that, so it comes across. And I think
if you watch like the last battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin, it's so good. I'm like watching it again. I like it even better than the Darth Maul fight, and that was like pretty sick.
Damn.
It's really good. I mean, they're going crazy. Like the choreography got better and better, and I love the Darth Maul fight. So I don't know, like. They had some good moments.
There's stakes too. You'll find that the best lightsaber battles have stakes to it, right? So this is like, the student and the master, the two brothers fighting, right? Like
okay, I think maybe that's a good point because like I don't know. In some ways, it's almost heartbreaking because it's like. It's kind of sad to be like, hey, like this was my student I cared about. Well, sort of. Like, you kind of had a love-hate relationship with Anakin, Obi-Wan the whole time. But still, it's kind of heartbreaking to like see this person go evil and they don't see it themselves.
Well,
right?
You see Obi-Wan with tears in his eye, going, "I failed you. Like you were the chosen one. Like what have you done?" Like, and he's failed, right? So it's awesome.
Yeah, and it's like I don't know. Yeah, so there's a lot of emotional stakes, and so then when you pair it with really good fight choreography, I mean, it goes like full circle of just like, oh wow, this is a really cool fight scene, not just because yay, it's a bunch of sticks like being hit together and cool CGI. It actually has meaning behind it too. So. Right. It's good. It's perfect.
Yeah,
I'm watching this right now, and the CGI does not hold up. It's a lot of like cheesy looking lava.
It looks like
I don't know. I give credit when it's like a long time ago. I don't know, but
and a galaxy far away.
It does look like a modern video game.
Yeah,
it looks like a really great PS2 era cutscene.
No, it's better than PS.
At least PS3.
There's a lot of stuff on set. There's a lot of stuff.
It's all green screen. That's why it's green
screen that isn't moving right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of why the acting is so wooden as well, because if you look at anything behind the scenes of any of these movies, it's just actors in front of just green. There's nothing there in any of them.
A tennis ball.
And then you've got George Lucas as your director, so the actor's like, okay, what's my motivation here? He's probably like, you got a lightsaber.
You hate sand.
Yeah. So come on.
Oh, dang, that was good.
All right, so do we have any other comments on Revenge of the Sith before we move on?
Meh.
Yeah.
It wasn't a terrible movie. It wasn't super memorable either. I don't know.
Certainly not the best Star Wars, but I wouldn't say it's a bad film.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a bad film. It's not a bad Star Wars.
It belongs in the middle. That's what I'll say.